All right, we are live. Sydney and Kris Cantu. We are talking about masculinity today. Welcome, Kris. Thanks so much for taking the time out, brother.
Hey, Sydney, thanks for having me on, man. And a very important topic, obviously, to discuss and to dismantle and break down. So thanks for having me on, and good to be here.
Dude, the pleasure is absolutely all mine. So, as we just chatted before we came live on this, we've got a couple of things that I want to cover off first before we go anywhere else in this discussion, because obviously this is a bit of a hot topic at the moment. For those of you who are across it, you would have known that very, very recently the the American Psychology Association has declared masculinity a problem, and that in itself is a problem. I'm not going to use the word problematic because that's what feminists use that they don't agree with. But the first thing I want to do is actually share my screen here. And the reason I want to share that is because it actually has the definition of masculinity. I think that one of the reasons why there's so much convolution around everything that's going out, we've literally lost track of definition of words are. So we're hearing like misogyny used in all sorts of ridiculous contexts, masculinity used in all sorts of ridiculous contexts, and everyone's arguing about this, reaching consensus because everyone's got different ideas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the definition of masculinity. I'm just going to share that on the screen here. All right, present. There we go. You're going to see that now. And it literally says masculinity, qualities or attributes regarded as characteristic of men, i.e. handsome, muscled, and driven. For example, here's a prime example of masculinity. Synonyms are virility, manliness, maleness, vigor, strength, muscularity, ruggedness, toughness, robustness. Nowhere anything along the lines of, violent or sexist or any of this other nonsense so regularly hearing. Now I'm going to actually switch over to the definition of toxic, because toxic masculinity is a particular phrase that is being used non-stop, and I think most people are pretty sick of it. And toxic literally is defined as poisonous, venomous, virulent, noxious, dangerous, destructive, harmful, unsafe, malignant, injurious, etc., etc. It can go on. So we should be posing, really, and all this has been pushed through academia, as you and I well know, and a lot of other people who've been red-pilled know, Kris.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see what's toxic or poisonous or virulent or any of those adjectives about being handsome, being muscled, being driven, being virile, manly, vigorous, strong, muscular, ruggedness. You know what I mean? Like, none of the actual words that masculinity actually defines are in any way toxic, poisonous, or any of these others. So toxic masculinity to me is probably one of the biggest oxymorons the world has ever seen. And it's like, how do we stop this in academia, Kris,
Well, yeah, that's a good question, Sydney. And the further down the rabbit hole I go, in the more awake I become and see day by day what's going on in the world, I like to term it full spectrum dominance, because essentially we're held in an invisible cage, and anywhere from media to academia to psychology, everywhere is it's a full-on assault of masculinity, male bonding, being strong, being hypervigilant. I mean, the whole world was built on masculine men, going up into huge skyscrapers, building the cities that we live in today. And so the way I see it is as more of kind of a macro level of, this is an assault on us, the common man, the man that kind of built this world. So articles like this, it really just is a way to program the sleeping masses. You and I may know and see this agenda, but the average person that is eating crappy food, that's watching, dumbed down television 4, 5, 6 hours a day or more, they're going to see something like this and just easily go along with it. And that's the way I see it. It's a full spectrum. Every aspect of society these days is going and attacking what once was a treasured, a resource, which is man, and the ability to work hard, the ability to earn money, the ability to protect, the weaker kind of individuals, whether it be children, women, disabled, things like that. So we're just on the chopping block in terms of this concept of masculinity. And, you and I have kind of spoke in the past about positive masculinity and how do we be an example for the younger guys that are under this conditioning. I was thinking the other day, man, I would hate to be a teenager again. I would hate to be stuck in the mass programming of school and media and all of that. It would just be torturous. And then we really got to extend the olive branch and really got to reach out to those younger guys out there, because they're really the victims of this. Sydney and Kris Cantu and Men 101 and all of us, we're kind of seeing it from afar, but the younger guys that are getting prescribed all this medication and, really in the system, and they don't have a choice, they have to be kind of stuck into it. They're the ones that we really need to help out and get this message to, because they're the ones that are going to be beaten up the most by it.
Yeah, exactly, Kris. And I think the thing that concerns me the most is these kids that are in the system, that are in this matrix, that are in this blue pill framework that we're seeing propagating in schools. Obviously, out from academia, you're getting the people, all of the women are going into academia. And I'm not attacking women here. I'm just saying that, even Bettina Arndt talked about this a couple of years ago. I interviewed her recently about her new book, #Men2. She was talking about how women come out of university a lot more left-wing, having women talk about how they went into their psychology class, and on the first day, the first thing the lecturer is saying is, I hope all of you are feminists. And they're getting indoctrinated into this feminist mindset. They're getting indoctrinated into this belief that men are holding women back. So, of course, in the pursuit of the greater good, they're aiming to lift girls up and maybe say to the guys, hey, you had your turn, but it's like these kids are 13, 14. They haven't had their turn at anything. They need a chance just like everyone else does. Like, if you perceive that something's happened for 20 years, that doesn't mean that today it's happening. You know what I mean? But this is where we're at. And I'm seeing a lot of sort of to and fro. I'm just actually sharing a screen right now. And I typed in more masculinity into Google, which, as we know, is one of the more biased search engines. But it says how to have more masculinity, how to look more masculine. So people are actually searching up these terms. These are the two first terms. People are searching for this. People are screaming out for masculine role models, especially those who don't have a man in the house, who are being raised in a single parent family where the mother happens to be the custodial parent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a weird dynamic, right? Because I think we all essentially want the same thing in life, in general, in health and wellness, and all these different aspects of just living life day to day. But you got to really look at who's pushing this agenda. These government organizations like the APA, the university system, all the way down to kindergarten is what we would call it, those first years of school, and now not only with the foods, but these kids 5 years old, they're deciding to change genders. They're given just a pathway for this, parents supporting it, the LGBTQ agenda. It's a lot worse than when you and I were coming up. I know we're not too far away in age, but now it's just a full-on assault. And if you are in one of those single parent families where the mom's being raising a boy, especially, man, that's a tough thing to get out of as that young boy, because then you feel like this is the way the world is, and there's so few. That's why I'm hopeful that more of them can stumble across MGTOW and find guys putting their stories out there and putting information out there. Although I don't agree with all of it, there's still some good foundational information that a lot of us are sharing online that can help those younger guys so that they don't feel alone, so that they don't feel like, you know, being masculine or being, you know, strong or good looking or whatever the case may be is a bad thing. Right now, it probably feels to them like this is the way the world works, and which is not true.
That's 100% right. And this is, I mean, where do you go as a young boy, especially if you have primarily female teachers? And at the moment in Australia, they're saying, oh, you know, we need more male teachers. There's a, you know, I think someone even referred to a man drought in teaching. It's like, oh, yeah, the old man drought chestnut, hey? But it's just absolutely nuts. No one wants to talk about the elephant. No one has the balls or the temerity to actually say, I'll tell you why men are not going into teaching. I'll tell you why. You know, and it's pretty freaking black and white as far as I'm concerned. Men don't want their career ruined. They know what can happen to them very, very, very easily. So easily. And it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. So where do they turn? Sports, you know, even, you know, having women come in and kick a field goal for the men's football team, or it's just, you know, now I look at modern sports and like the NBA or NFL, and it's just being so feminized and so, you know, LeBron James wearing equality shoes. And so they can't really, you know, it's going to get to a point where you can't turn to sports anymore, which is kind of what my generation did. And, you know, that was at least some solace of masculinity being praised and being, you know, a good thing. But as we go along, I think it's important to understand it from a macro level of who controls government, who controls the media, who's in charge of all of these institutions, where government has in my opinion, you know, we don't have to get into this aspect, but government has replaced God. And so, you know, government is now in charge of all of these different sectors and pushing this down our throats. It's really the common man like you and I, Sydney, and the guys in the chat that are out there, you know, living day to day under this tyranny of thought. You know, we talk about thought police, you know, or the thoughtism, THOT. You know, we're really the ones that are the last stand between worldwide enslavement in terms of this kind of level of thinking. And we're just like this small community that's putting out information and putting out, you know, what we feel like is the truth in our journey and our awakening of waking up to these things. So, man, your job, Sydney, being in the box every day, you know, every time I check in the afternoon, I see Sydney's live and he's going through these articles and you're tearing apart this craziness that we're seeing with all the teachers, you know, raping little boys, and, you know, the different articles like what we're talking about today. You know, if it wasn't for guys like you doing that, like, you know, who else is going to stand up and expose this agenda out of the whole, I'd say, truth community, which I believe MGTOW is a part of the truth community, in my opinion. No one's really getting into this stuff. You know, they may blanket, you know, some kind of topical explanation on like an InfoWars or some of these other stations, but no one's really digging in deep and flushing out, you know, who's behind this stuff. So guys like you and I know Howard Dare and Darius and a lot of other guys out there, JB, Men 101, you know, we're really the last stand between, you know, this just going full on, this agenda going full on, and then at least having some kind of shining light with people being normal and being coming to their senses and realizing that this is an agenda against us.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, speaking of the rabbit hole and about the whole InfoWars style, by the way, can you hear me okay, Kris? Because some people were commenting that my volume was a bit low.
Oh, much better, much better.
I've got the mic sitting on my dick at the moment. So,
do you have the Black Tyrone Yeti, or
I do actually.
the Chad?
It's the Tyrone blue.
Nice.
So
Same here.
look, I've actually got some reason in the whole theme of this InfoWars stuff. I've actually been speaking with a few people over the last few days. One of those people is Faisal Khan, the guy who's beat herself up in the elevator, and went to the government, Big Daddy government Tyrone for domestic violence asylum. So I'm going to be speaking with her very soon and getting the full story, not just the FemStream media filtered version. Also have I had Robert Mason tweets. Robert Mason is the guy who was divorced wife, and when his oldest son was 21, out of 3 sons, he found out that none of the kids were his, and he'd already paid her a £4 million divorce settlement plus child support. And I'm also I got another one coming up. It's going to be pretty interesting. I've been speaking with Bernard Gaynor, who was in the military, and he was speaking out against the LGBT agenda in the military and how women were getting a 6-week window in which there was basically a blackout for men. Men weren't allowed to apply for a military artilleryman or infantryman position for up to 6 weeks while they were waiting for female candidates. And female full-time military personnel in Australia only have to serve a 2-year minimum term. Men have to serve a 4-year minimum term. And the women have a lower fitness entry standard. And even if they don't make the minimum standard, they still get personal training for over 40 weeks, including accommodation and wages paid for by the government to help them get up to that standard. What do you think of that, Kris?
Well, it's par for the course, and I would just say more men. I mean, if they had an influx of men that were in there doing the job, they wouldn't need to bring all these women in. But we're leaving the plantation. I mean, whether it's the workforce, the military, corporate, whether it's teaching. I mean, a lot of guys are MGTOW, they just don't go by MGTOW by name, but they're leaving the plantation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be, struggling to just lower the standards everywhere and put these women in charge. So a lot of guys are getting it, even though we don't maybe see them here on YouTube or in this kind of community online. But guys are figuring it out, and they're leaving and going and doing other things. Now, that's not to say that a lot of men out there, a lot of males out there are leaving the plantation and just going to dark rooms and fapping and playing video games all day and not doing anything with their lives. There's a lot of guys doing that too, and taking the black pill and just saying, peace out, let it all burn. This whole thing, there's nothing I can do about it. And so that's another aspect of this where, they're almost going along with the agenda. I mean, if toxic masculinity is bad, they're certainly not meeting that with a fight. They're just kind of going along with that program. So it's important that we help those guys, at least in the middle, that are seeking answers. Some of them are just going to kind of default, let everything happen and not feel, the need to fight this agenda or expose it in any way. But there's a lot of guys out there that are. And that's the important where we need to focus on. I'll take just a quick detour in terms of this manosphere and how important we are and how it relates to MGTOW. I stumbled across a group or a channel called Red Man Group last night, and actually a lot of the guys that were on that panel, I kind of follow on Instagram and kind of chat with and on Instagram, on Twitter. I've seen them around for a long time. Actually. What's that?
I've heard of.
Yeah. It's kind of, I guess, what a lot of MGTOW would call the PUA section of the manosphere. Selling PUA soap and putting out, kind of, and we may bash those guys, but they're still kind of part of the manosphere, and they're still putting good work out there. So what I see is a lot of divide and conquer, even within the online quote unquote manosphere group, because they may see things a different direction. Essentially, we all are battling against feminism, which is the big bad, capital F, entity that we need to expose. But also, when we talk about toxic masculinity or competitiveness or hierarchy and dominance, we still see like a divide and conquer even within our smaller subsections, where that guy's a PUA. PUA is like a 4-letter word now, and don't that guy's bad, he's a PUA. What I'm realizing more and more is that there's so much divide and conquer. Like those guys, whether they're selling PUA soap or not, like I got to open up and realize that they're our brothers too. Just because they don't speak about MGTOW or maybe even talk trash about MGTOW, like they're pretty sharp. Like they have their podcast, they got a convention, they're obviously monetizing it and doing a good job, but those guys aren't our enemies, and I'm not against those guys because they have the same enemy that I do. So I would just say, from my existence, from my perspective, like we got to come together and find our common ground, and push forward that way, instead of finding a reason to not like a content producer or another voice that's out there that's essentially saying the same things we are, just in a different way and approaching it a different way. So, I saw their show. I threw a quick shout out to those guys. It's not something I would watch or kind of, keep up to date with, but I see a lot of this infighting going on, and, together we stand, divided we fall. If we're going to go out and bash, another guy for selling PUA soap, which I'm guilty of too, then, we're just going to fall down by the wayside because of the divide and conquer. And I think that's what they want also.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be real, Kris. Probably the majority of us MGTOW guys who have realized, look, this is just all a big game, and we're now seeing the bigger picture. We're at a macro level. I think a lot of us have actually at some stage either been a PUA, whether it just be on an individual level where we're just doing it for ourselves, or whether we've helped other people. Like I know Miggy used to, from what I understand, he used to be a PUA. You know what I mean? So many of these guys that I'm seeing, Yogi Obes, he's gone MGTOW now. He's a pretty cool YouTube producer, maybe not so much along the lines of what I do, but I like his stuff, and he used to be PUA. So it's pretty interesting to see that a lot of PUAs are actually progressing into going their own way. And some go there out of anger and frustration, and we see that. Some go there out of just a place of evolution. And, I can respect all those places because not everyone's the same. And there used to be a song, and it goes, if everybody looked the same, we'd get tired of looking at each other. And likewise, if everybody spoke and acted the same, we'd get tired of interacting with each other. So,
good point.
Yeah,
good point.
I saw a post from Suzanne Venker a while ago, and some girl said, "So you really think it's the females in general and not the leftist ideologues who are equating men from other non-Western cultures to the mostly positive masculinity of the men in the West?" And I can see there that there was a good intention behind that comment. And then this dude replied and said, Sophie, it is the females in general who are going on with the leftist ideologues. You've proven that on some level you've been subconsciously indoctrinated as well. No disrespect. I just observed that you use the term positive masculinity. Masculinity is masculinity. Masculinity literally means qualities or attributes regarded as characteristic of men. For example, handsome, muscly, driven. Like using the exact same Google definition that I brought to everyone's attention at the start of the show. And I said, the fact that you needed to preface the word masculinity with the words mostly positive means you think there are aspects of masculinity that are not positive. Masculinity is inherently positive and does not need an adjective preceding it. The word toxic literally means poisonous. What exactly is poisonous about any element of masculinity as per its actual definition? That's why the term toxic masculinity is a complete oxymoron. And that's where I really got the inspiration for that lead in, because I saw that and I was like, man, that is so unbelievably on point. And it was what I was thinking and feeling, but I couldn't articulate it in that way just really helped me to bring that out. So, you know, it's just interesting, even people that are, even females that are sort of saying, well, hey, there's nothing toxic about masculinity, are still indoctrinated into thinking that, you know, and this is what we're up against.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another aspect that I've seen is female PUAs on YouTube and getting into the game of and they have huge channels, you know, 100,000 to 300,000 subscribers, and getting in there and saying, hey guys, this is how you talk to girls and this is how you get the girl, and giving I guess men dating advice or PUA advice. So I think sometimes, you know, the battle that we fight is against the thirsty beta males that are out there, or I think it's all just levels of awakening. I mean, like you said, we kind of were quote unquote PUA at some point because we wanted to get laid, and then we kind of realized the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, and then we kind of moved on, and then we fell into MGTOW, whether it was, you know, MGTOW 101 or Sandman or TFM or whoever, and then we're like, oh, now I get it, you know, and then but we keep going and we keep awakening to the agenda and realizing it's an agenda. It's not just naturally happening. So as we start to shift out of quote unquote plantation, there's going to be other opportunists, I think, come in, whether male or female, to kind of fill the void that we're leaving behind. And I would just say for the guys out there to continue your awakening, to continue your truth seeking, to not feel like this is it. This is, you know, MGTOW. This is all that's out there. This, you know, that there's nothing more to learn out there or nothing more to awaken to, because that's when, you know, that's when you kind of get stuck in a box. We're all in a box, but there's bigger boxes that we need to break out of. And then once we get past that box, there's going to be another box to understand and to research and expose. So, you know, I've been uploading a lot of my older videos from 2017, and then I'm watching them again for the first time and being like, whoa, I was like really pissed. And man, I'm glad that I said those things because that's how I felt, but I'm like in a different place with my awakening now. But going and going back to those videos is kind of like, well, you know, that was it. When you're stuck in, you know, and you've traveled around some, but I had never been outside of the United States. And if you're someone that's in the United States and never been outside of it, you tend to get really pissed off because the energy is very dark in the U.S. and it's a much different energy than it is traveling around. So I would just say continue on your awakening. Don't follow me. Don't follow anyone. Don't follow Sydney. But take what you want, leave the rest, but keep going in your awakening and in your path. And I think that's the way to kind of live through this attack that we're under right now.
100%, man. And, you know, something I want to share with a lot of you guys out there, particularly those of you who feel very frustrated about the constant attack on masculinity. There are people out there in academia who are fighting back against it. If you type in more masculinity into duckduckgo.com and you flick through, you're going to find articles from like HuffPost and women.com.au, toxic masculinity. But then you hear a lot of people saying, well, hey, masculinity is actually really important. And that's the stuff you need to be listening to. And I've actually just put something up on the screen now. This is from baptistcare.com.au. And at the moment in Australia, we've got this huge thing about domestic violence. And I did a over an hour video where I raged almost a year ago. And Miggy will remember this one because he actually commented in the box, oh, hey, you know, type 1 if Sydney should go get a drink of water so he stops coughing while he's raging. And of course, everyone started typing 1 and I cracked up laughing and everything was cool again. But what you're seeing on the screen right now, this is the kind of stuff that we are seeing in Australia. Like, you know, the only man in that whole entire page of community support is changing men's behavior. And this is exactly what is being pushed, the changing of men's behavior. Not the, okay, let's understand why these things are happening. Let's understand what is causing the very few, by the way, men who do these things that no one should do to anybody, not just men to women or women to men or men to men or women to women. I'm not going to mention any other genders because there are none. There's only 2. But yeah, I mean, it's saying changing men's behavior. We work with men who have used violence and abuse in family relationships, and then we provide support for women and children escaping domestic violence. So it's like, okay, we're going to provide you with financial and physical support for you and your children to escape quote unquote domestic violence. Even if there wasn't actually any domestic violence, you just need to say there is and we'll support you. But if you're a man, then we are going to make sure that you change your behavior to be a little soy boy, to be an emasculated shell of a man. You know, masculinity is nothing to be ashamed of. You know, we can fight back and deal against these things without being violent, you know, and a truly masculine man doesn't need to be violent unless he's absolutely defending himself. And even then, it's controlled aggression with the purpose of getting an outcome. It is not uncontrolled aggression. And uncontrolled aggression is essentially what, quote unquote, toxic masculinity is, even though there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. But the reason that there's uncontrolled aggression so much is because there's no male role models in the lives of these kids. There's no male parent in the house who is a real masculine man. Right? He's either an emasculated man or he's not there at all because he's been forced out of the home using daddy government to give a redistribution of wealth to the mother. Or there's no teachers, no male teachers in the classroom to be there for these kids, you know? And it's just a really sad state of affairs. And it's people like you and I that might get the voice out to 5 dudes who will then talk to a couple more. And that's how we spread the word. And that's why men going their own way is growing. That's why this teens going their own way. I don't know if you ever saw that, Kris.
Oh, yeah.
But there was an article, teens going their own way. Did you ever catch that?
I did a live stream on it on my old channel, so totally, and I'm all for that. Get them while they're young and make them realize that this is an agenda pointed, this is a loaded weapon pointed directly at their heads, and that this isn't the world that they live in, that it's being foisted upon them.
Absolutely, and I've just actually done a little search here now for teens going their own way. And there is heaps of stuff on this. Like, holy crap. You know, anyone who's watching this stream right now who has nephews or sons needs to show them this. Check this out.
Oh, it looks like someone took my thumbnail there. I made it to the front page. Awesome.
But yeah, like teenagers, of course, here we go. Here's the shaming tactics. Teenagers vow to shun girls in men's rights fad. It's like, this is not a fad and it's not about men's rights. And look, the thing is, a right is a legislated entitlement. So a women's right is a legislated entitlement for women. It's not a basic human decency. It's a legislated entitlement. And women have so many rights now that they're literally living in the age of entitlement. I don't know if you ever saw that. I'm going to quickly flick to it. Miranda Devine, female entitlement mentality. She literally wrote about this, and you guys should check it out. Women believe they live in the age of entitlement. Miranda Devine says women better at bullying than men. Female entitlement mentality, it's all about me, you know? So, and then ladies, let's be honest, right? Calling them out, again, referring back to that article. It's kind of crazy how this is actually being called out in the mainstream media because it's not something we see on TV, but obviously it's a printed article, which is good. We've got teens going their own way, news, social issues and politics on Essential Kids. On Reddit, teenage boys joining men going their own way, teens going their own way on Whirlpool, a few thoughts on MGTOW, like teens going their own way covered by the mainstream media on MGTOW.com. And of course, the Good Men Project, quote unquote, the Good Cuck Project, you mean?
Exactly.
What's going on with boys in schools today? And here we go. Boys are sometimes encouraged to misbehave because we have created this boys will be boys idea. No, nobody's encouraging boys to misbehave. Like, did we not just see that with the behavior change stuff? Like, come on. You know what I mean?
It's another
functions. Simple as that.
These articles like the APA just put out with toxic masculinity, it's really to further the pharmaceutical industrial complex. I mean, when a kid is forced to has full of hormones, full of energy, and he's forced to sit in a room with a female teacher, basically regurgitating and having them memorizing these random facts that they'll never use again. And now he's acting out. He has all this energy. They want to stuff him full of not only vaccines but pharmaceuticals, and to really just kind of dumb him down and to eviscerate that masculine energy inside of them. So things like the APA or these articles that you're showing here, they kind of play hand in hand with the all-out assault of the human race at the higher level, but essentially, the masculine aspect of it. Traditional masculinity can hurt boys. These new guidelines that are coming out, and it's just like anything. You and I may see the truth, but the average person out there who's not thinking is going to read something like this and really just go along with the agenda. So hopefully a lot of these kids that are trying to figure these things out can find, a Sidney MGTOW channel or a Darius channel or someone else that can actually, put some truth in their minds, because they've just been propagandized and programmed into thinking like, well, maybe I am toxic. Maybe I am bad. Maybe I just should, bat for the other team, or, be more feminine or be weaker. And with the soy and the chemicals in the water and the air, I heard, I guess not confirmed, but that a lot of the chemtrails that they're spraying are really just lithium dust particles, nanoparticles. And so that's not even that far of a stretch to believe that, we're assaulted in every way: food, water, air, just to weaken us as a human race. But more specifically, the ones that are really going to be able to stop this agenda, if there was a chance, are guys like me and you and the other masculine men out there. It's just a full-on assault, and they're just going after the younger kids with articles like this.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Kris, when you say chemtrails, you're not talking about femtrails, aka snail trails.
No, the snail trails are on the ground, and the betas that go to the female PUA channels are mostly concerned with the snail trails. No, these are, you could even call them femtrails up in the sky, because they're all making us weaker and more feminized potentially. But yeah, it's interesting to see when I was living in Colorado and in California and Texas, just a full-on assault of these chemtrails. But here in Southeast Asia, you don't see them as much, but I think they have other methods of getting to the populations and weakening them. So I'm sure you guys get your fair share out in Australia too, which is kind of a worldwide program at this point.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I've got just referring back to it, I've got the article up from the APA at the moment. This is actually in New York Times, but it's essentially capturing the content. It says, traditional masculinity seems to be, in this report at least, conflated with being a pig or a creep or a Harvey Weinstein kind of person, says Laura Ingraham on her Fox News show on Tuesday. Released in the wake of the Me Too movement, the new set of guidelines seem to reflect contemporary conversations about gender, bullying, and harassment. It's like, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I'm of the opinion that a lot of these, like Harvey Weinstein and things like that, they're staged in a way to put the Me Too agenda out there, just so they can point to a Harvey Weinstein and say, look how bad this is. Never mind you that those actresses were willingly participants in these things, that they wanted the roles, they wanted to be at the Oscars and the award shows, so they did the casting couch situation, and now we look at it as a bad thing. So for someone that's kind of awake, you see right through it. But again, most of the people out there, they're just going to sleep through this and go along with the agenda.
Yeah, like I literally saw an article the other day that I can't remember his name, but there was one guy who was offered a role in a show, and they wanted him to kiss other actors on screen. And he's like, no, not doing it. And they're like, oh, but that's kind of like part of it. He goes, well, because I don't do it because I've got a wife and she's the only one I kiss. And, look, I don't advocate for marriage, because we all know how dangerous that is. And, even to reference Bettina again, I know not everyone's a fan, but she said the other day on the mainstream media, on TV, marriage is a really dangerous deal for men. And it is. But this guy's married already. He's obviously been happily married for a number of years, and he's putting it down. He's laying down the rules. And these women could have laid down the rules and said no and put their roles on the line. But they wanted the job and they were prepared to open their legs for it. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, I think in terms of kind of next steps or solutions, obviously, you know, you and I can see this agenda happening. I would say less infighting and more outreach. And you know, what struck me about the Red Man group is they had, you know, 4 or 5 guys, whatever. They're all there talking about these issues, actually talking about the same thing we're talking about today, this APA article. But to have more outreach, more collaboration, I think this was something that I was trying to do with like the Ronin Man and Miggy, and having, you know, meetups in person. That kind of got thrown to the wayside with all of the you know, misinformation that was put out against me purposely by those, you know, kind of considered quote unquote brothers. But I think that is the you know, we can't be in isolation off in our own little silos. That there's no strength in that. I think the strength is waking more people up by collaborating, by, you know, having, you know, even if it's just 2 guys like me and you getting on and talking about these things. I think there's strength there, and I think that I want to see more of that take place, and that's where we really build a foundation. If we're all just off in our silos with one-person channels, just doing things on our own, you know, that's not, that doesn't convey strength. I think when you can get past the differences, you know, if I disagree with you, Sydney, on 10% of what you talk about, but the other 90% I'm on board with, like, you know, that's enough for me. You know what I mean? And I'd like to see more of that taking place within our kind of community here, with us exposing this agenda and what's going on.
Yeah, 100%, man. And you look, I love that we can have conversations where we're so on the same page with something like this, where we've both got different perspectives, different information, different ideas on what we can do and collaborate together. We don't have to agree on anything. And that's the thing, like this, I see so much argument, like so many arguments between people. Well, I don't agree with you on this. So therefore I'm discrediting you as far as all of your ideas. And that's just a silly thing to do, because I think we really need to draw on as wide a knowledge base as we can, and make our own decisions. And this is what taking the red pill is all about in my mind, you know?
Yeah, there's strength in numbers, and I think we have the numbers, but it's just, you know, being off in different silos and talking about these things individually. Like, let's come together. Let's try to get past a lot of the differences where we may not see eye to eye. Because the bigger, I mean, you know, if the Red Man group is my enemy, or some PUA content, you know, is my enemy, then we're all fucked. To be honest, and we gotta find our agreements and find common ground and push forward, because they're not going to stop putting these articles out. Here's the thing, guys. They're not going to stop pushing this agenda in schools, in media, in every aspect of life. They're going to keep every day in and day out, putting out their propaganda and tearing down quote unquote masculinity. And so if we're all here just, you know, talking about it individual, you know, at least for the content producer aspects, you know, if you're out there, you know, in a silo and there's no one around you that you think is red pilled, like that's one thing. And you know, it's not something you would just want to come out with someone that you're not close to. But the more that the older guys can kind of at least see opportunities to put some of this information out locally, I think that's going to help, at least, you know, short term, but long term, man. Together we stand, divided we fall, man. Like if we really have this strong brotherhood, then, you know, let's stop some of the infighting. And also another thing is a lot of these commenters, they're online trolls. They're actually paid to come in and cause divide and conquer and divide. What they see is, you know, the burgeoning strength that we pose. I'm sure other groups in the manosphere get the same thing, but really no other group besides MGTOW is really getting closest to the target than anyone else. Guys like you out there every day in the box, putting out these articles, building camaraderie amongst everyone here, doing good, important work. So I would just say support Sydney, support other content producers that you feel, that you resonate with, but don't look at someone just because you may disagree in one aspect that they're your enemy, for you. So just kind of my recommendations is what to look for next and what we can do to help this thing. Otherwise, we're going to take the black pill. We're just going to screw it, watch it all burn. And I don't think that's the best perspective for us.
Yeah, 100%. And look, it's just very quickly on the topic of support. Just wanted to say thank you to Super N Third Master for that $5 super chat. Says feminists are man killers. And did you know the word media means deceive? Yeah, pretty much. Hey, I mean, look, I know a lot of feminists who they think they're feminists, but they're egalitarians. I know a lot of them that think they're about equality, but they don't actually understand what equality is because they don't understand what men go through. So there's so many different pieces of the spectrum. And I think that the more the truth starts to filter into the mainstream media, as the femstream media realizes that they can't just take this one path because people will turn against them, which is what's starting to happen. We're going to start to see a lot more truth come out. And at the end of the day, Kris, that's all you and I are fighting for. We're fighting to get the truth out there.
Absolutely. And there's different stages of our awakening. So, if you're not ready to receive the information, just let it bounce off of you. But, my philosophy has always been take what you want, leave the rest. And, my enemies out there are not other content producers. They're the big daddy Tyrone governments out there that are foisting all of this upon us down our throat. So that's what I would say.
Our soy drinking YouTube content moderators and our Susan Wojcicki's and stuff like that who are trying to censor us for having a voice just because we disagree with their particular perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also a lot of female, I would say, infiltrators into MGTOW. So, they're going for those clicks, man. They're going for those views. They're going for those monetized videos. So just be wary of that. I know a lot of guys that I've seen, whether they're real or not, they like to hang out in these female live streams and different female content producers that say, I'm gonna get some clicks out of this. I'm gonna put MGTOW in my videos now. And for the most part, I see them get the wrath of all you guys out there. So that's like a good thing. But again, if a chick has a channel and puts out MGTOW and her thing, like really that's not your biggest enemy at this point. We got to kind of redirect all of that anger and that. Like I'm pissed off about seeing this APA article in the soy world order that I see every day, but even I got to check myself and think, well, these YouTube content creators aren't my enemy. The big enemy is out there spraying these chemtrails, putting soy in all the foods, putting articles like this from the APA, the voice of authority. Like that's the real enemy that we need to target.
Yeah, no, look, that's 100% correct, man. There's this. I just can't get over the assault. Even today, the ex-Prime Minister, John Howard, who introduced 50-50 shared parenting, which our first female Prime Minister ripped out of the legislation within 6 days of becoming Prime Minister. He basically spotted a domestic violence incident while he was actually out for a walk. And I'm actually going to share that on the screen now because it's really, really interesting. And there's a lot of stuff that you don't see. You need to really dig further into everything you look at. Here we go. So from Prime Minister to crime fighter, John Howard intervenes in a domestic violence dispute while out on his daily walk. John Howard hailed a hero as he helped save woman in domestic violence row. Then he kept by woman's side until police arrived and assisted officers. And there we go, right down at something like paragraph 14. A 44-year-old woman was charged with breaching an apprehended domestic violence order She was granted conditional bail and will appear at Manly Local Court. So she's already a violent criminal, which is why they put a domestic violence order against her. And now she's breaching the orders that were put on her because she's a violent criminal and committing another crime. And she's just going to get a slap on the wrist, as we know.
It's comical at this point. I mean, you're so good at finding these little nuggets of backwardsness that almost every time you can see, oh well, we'll just let the female teacher off for raping, having a gangbang with 14-year-olds, but this one guy that said one thing and then now he's going to get locked up.
Yeah,
it's comical, but it's not. It's very sad at the same time. So that's why I think walking off the plantation or having the least amount to do with this clown world that you're in is a self-preservation method. I think you could also look at it as a divide and conquer. I think a lot of the normies out there look at MGTOW as like divide and conquer, but man, if it's between being off to myself as a lone wolf or getting mixed up and saying the wrong thing or going on a date and getting accused of whatever, then call me a lone wolf at that point.
And this is something that a younger dude who actually came and spoke to me, and he's going to Japan to see his mum this month. He's been with his father in Australia, and they've had a bit of a tumultuous relationship, but he's living on his own now, and he's found his own zen and his own peace. He was actually saying to me after we'd spoken a few times, and he was originally suicidal, but now he's found a really good place, and he's like starting to see past the matrix. And he said to me, I realize that there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. And I was like, man, you smashed that out of the park. I could not have said it better myself.
Great. And I think as we go along, more guys are going to start to get it. It's going to start to click. Hopefully they don't have to be bit by this rabid, rabies-infested dog called feminism before it's too late. But hopefully we can learn from others and do what we need to do. Get through this as much as we can. But I guarantee you, the media and the APA type of organizations, they're going to day in and day out be pushing this agenda. So, we can choose to, be off by ourselves, or we can choose to at least shine the light on the hypocrisy. And I think your channel has done an excellent job of that. Just going back and maybe to share with these guys, when I was living in the home free lifestyle and I had just had enough. I mean, I was just sick of getting rent raped, sick of working these jobs with a bunch of soy boys and feminists. And so I kind of decided to take my own path, and it was Sydney that was in the box watching my live streams while I was in the box literally. And I just want to say thank you again for supporting me then and sending out a hoodie and a shirt. It really meant a lot to me. So, that was almost 2 years ago. Crazy how time flies, but
actually, Kris, it can't have been 2 years ago. Because I've been doing this channel. Oh, you know what? Probably was because I've been doing this channel for just over 12 months now.
Yeah.
But it would have been probably before that when I was still consuming content rather than making it. So that's fair enough.
Yeah. And then to see your rise and your hard work and daily live streams and daily exposing of the agenda is really inspiring. And I want that to be the case, hopefully with someone that's out there watching this stream, that if you're thinking about starting a channel, if you have something to say, you don't have to show your face, you don't have to have crazy, graphics or, as long as you have like as long as it sounds okay, for the audio, you could be a blank black screen. Just get to the point and put your voice out there, because every guy that's listening that starts his own channel, that starts, even if it's just going through news articles or just personal experiences, it is another voice that is needed. Because like I said, these media outlets, almost 99.9% of them are going to be for this agenda. So don't think that your voice isn't needed and isn't appreciated. And you can look at Sydney as a perfect example of someone that consumed the content. He had enough. He started speaking out, and it continued to grow. And now, we love the wigs and the ginger rage and all of that, and just sitting in your car, just going going ham, you know, that's very powerful. So if you guys are out there, if you're on the fence about maybe I should, or someday, or maybe next week or next month, just do it. You'll get better at the speaking ability. You'll get better at the video production aspect of it, and it's needed. So that's my kind of plea to all the guys out there, is just start speaking your truth and start helping your fellow man. Because some kid out there may not like me or may not like Sydney, but he'll like your stuff, and you'll resonate with them.
Correct.
So that's what's needed, you know?
Whatever, as a guy, doesn't matter what you're feeling, what you're going through. Like, doesn't matter how obscure your situation may be. I guarantee it, there's someone out there who is in a more obscure position, or at least feels like they're in a less or more obscure position. Someone out there who's going through what you're going through, or who has gone through it, right? You're not alone. And I didn't know when I literally started my channel just so I could have a rant, And when I had that rant, I got a couple of subscribers. I mean, now I'm at like 16, 17,000. It's crazy. I wouldn't have even thought that I would get to this point, but yet there's people who love listening to me. And I'm very humbled by that, because it means that what I'm saying is having an impact. And that's why I'm always trying to find a variety of content. I'm trying to dig deep and let these guys know the truth about what's going on. Let these guys know the truth, that they're not abnormal, that they're not toxic, you know, that masculinity is not toxic, that, you know, they can achieve, that they can start their own channel, that they are capable, you know. And it's so important that every single one of you guys know that you just got to let go of that anger, dudes. Just got to let go of that anger, got to let go of that rage, because it won't serve you. Find your inner zen, let go of that which you can't change, and change that which you can.
Poetically said.
That's
Absolutely.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Kris, look, I think that we've had a pretty good stream, man. I think that's covered off a lot of what we've got to talk about, and I think that we've really sent out the right message to the guys listening. And I will be doing I don't know, like a webinar series, or even just like a tutorial series soon on how to start your own YouTube channel. I've actually created a new one, which I will be sharing on my community tab, that people can go and check out. It is called Omitted Truth, OMITTED, Truth. So if you want to go check that out, feel free to do so. I don't know if it's even going to show up in the search results yet. But if it shows up, it shows up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'll get the word out there either way. But yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews on there. So my interviews with Richard Mason, my interviews with Faisal Khan, you know, my interviews with Bernard Gaynor. I'm going to be probably putting an interview with Bettina on there. So all of the people that I'll be speaking to one-on-one about different stuff that's going on, that they're being attacked by the femstream media and the government and lawyers for, where they're just trying to speak the truth. I'm going to be exposing all of that. So I'm really looking forward to ramping that up and sharing that with you guys. But yeah, I think that's it from me for now. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that's been hanging on you before the end of the video, Kris?
I think you did a great job today, Sydney, bringing up the articles. I'd say all the viewers, all the soldiers out there, to support guys like Sydney, putting in the work each and every day. So whether it's PayPal or crypto or buying some merchandise, just support him in any way, because, you know, we're going against multi-billion-dollar entities that are taking your tax dollars and flipping it against you. So, you know, these kind of siloed content producers really need to support them. That's pretty much it, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the time and the opportunity, and look forward to being in the box with more of your live streams and throwing out the good, positive, toxic masculinity.
Man, likewise. I just quickly wanted to say thank you to Shane for that $5 super chat as well. I didn't want to omit you there after we're talking about the omitted truth, right? So I appreciate you, Shane. I appreciate you, Kris, and I really appreciate the journey that I was privileged enough to see you go on from where you were in the beginning until now. Really has, in many ways, helped me to just go live and just do this, because that's what you used to do, go live all the time, and that's what we're doing right now. and we're seeing more guys going live all the time, and it's just very exciting time to be alive. It's very exciting to see the rise of teens going their own way. It's very easy to see great to see the rise of the red pill. It's great to see the rise of men going their own way searches, the trending upwards. It's great to see the decline of sperm bank donations. It's great to see the drop in marriage. It's great to see this "where have all the good men gone" constantly coming out, because there's going to come a point at which some women are going to start putting the truth out there in the mainstream media and say, hey, we've been too entitled for too long, and we expect everything and don't want to have to give anything in return. We don't want to have to compromise, because that's exactly what's happening. Women are no longer prepared to compromise because they've been told they can have it all and that they shouldn't have to settle for second best. And this is why they're hitting 40, 50. They've got 3 cats and a couple of dogs. They've got piss all over their bed sheets, and they're wondering what went wrong. What went wrong is them listening to the lies of people that didn't even have children. You know, and don't listen to someone give advice on something that they haven't even experienced yet, because that's a surefire way to fail.
Absolutely. Boycott all female PUA channels. But well said there, Sydney. Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother. I'm going to call it a day. Thank you to all of you in the box for coming along. Thank you to those guys who donated. I appreciate you all, and I look forward to catching you guys again soon. What was it, Kris? Peace.
Cheers, guys. Peace.
Yeah, bye. All right, just trying to stop this broadcast.